Are you a football fan? Have you ever found yourself wondering, what in the world was that ref thinking? Well, Mike D, the referee, is here to help you. Join me on Whistle Talk. I talk to professionals on the field and in the booth to help you understand what is going on inside the mind of a football official. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our newest episode here of Whistle Talk. Tonight we're trying out the live stream once again, so make sure you're going out on YouTube, taking a look at that live stream, throwing on your chats. Got it posted on LinkedIn, some Twitter stuff, so we'll see how that all goes. So make sure that everybody is jumping on there. I know YouTube, it takes a minute or so until it starts up, but we should be good to go. So tonight, got the pleasure of having two very esteemed colleagues in the officiating world joining us from Texas, which I know, reading the Facebook comments, the TASO, okay, the Texas Association, wait a minute, Texas Association of Sports Officials. All right, I've been missing words on that one. Are joining us tonight. I got Mr. Mike Wise here tonight and Jenifer Calhoun joining us from Texas. Thank you very much for taking your time out tonight to jump on my show here tonight. Mike, Jenifer, how are you guys doing tonight?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. So, Mike, why don't you, we'll start off with you. I know you're a little bit more of a seasoned official than Jenifer, so I'm going to pass it along to you first. So, Mike, why don't you introduce yourself to the guests that are out there?
That's a polite way of saying I'm an old guy. Is that what that was? Oh, yeah, I'm Mike Wise, and currently I serve the Texas Association of Sports Officials football division as their rules interpreter and as a director of training. I've been involved in this since 1990, so this will be my 34th year. I'm not on the field any longer. I'm off the field, but I still do this for the association, and happy to do it.
Well, again, thank you very much. And Jenifer, how about a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm Jenifer Calhoun. I am the young buck to the game. I'm going into my 6th season on the field, and I absolutely love it. And I'm lucky enough to have some great friends that know a lot more than me. But you'll mostly know me from all of my endeavors to help recruit, get more folks on the field. So that way you're not working shorthanded every week.
I hear you on that. That's always been my crux of having this podcast, is just try to get the word out there. Let's recruit. Let's get more people out there. I love hearing that. So, with that being said, majority of the people that I have been dealing with personally in the high school level has been all NFHS rules and officials through the NFHS. I have had on, I've been lucky enough to have on a couple of NCAA officials as well. And I know that a lot of the feedback and a lot of the comments that I do get from the listeners out there are about the differences between the NFHS and how Texas, and I'm going to just keep it broad right now, but how Texas, their rules. So if one of you wants to jump in and kind of explain what the main differences are between NFHS and how it's run in Texas, jump right in.
Go ahead, Jenifer.
Oh, goodness gracious. I don't know about all that. I think one of the biggest differences that we had brought up earlier was we actually have the 10-second runoff that you will see in collegiate ball. We pretty much follow that to a T. Also, we had mentioned what you call a cut block. We'll go into that a little bit more in depth this evening because we actually do follow that. And you're probably going to hear a few different terms tonight. We have what they call UIL exceptions. So while we may use the NCAA rules as our foundation, we still have those exceptions because we do understand that we still have students on the field. These are not grown adults, and we can't have the same expectations on the field that we would have for a collegiate player.
Yep. Mike?
Yeah, I'll just add to that. And I know it's state by state, it's different. You all states except for Texas use the NFHS football rule book. I would imagine that each state might even have some exceptions. I don't know. But to talk about the organization in Texas, we have the organization that governs extracurricular activities in the schools, and that's the University Interscholastic League, or UIL, and they are one entity. I don't know what, like, for example, you would have in New Jersey that matches that, but then a different entity is ours, the Texas Association of Sports Officials, and we are not a part of the UIL, but obviously work hand in hand with them. But we're two different bodies all the way up to the top.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, so here in New Jersey, we all fall under the umbrella of the NJSIAA, the New Jersey Interscholastic Sports Association, Athletic Association. I'm sorry. Hopefully, nobody from the state level is listening to me butcher that. I apologize, but it's a mouthful with that. But yeah, here in New Jersey, we all fall under the NJSIAA, and we all follow the NFHS, and that's actually across the board with pretty much all of our sports of going with the federation rules. Where now, again, referring back to, as Jenifer was saying, down in Texas, you are typically utilizing the NCAA rules, which does have some modifications. The 10-second runoff being one of them that we see a lot on Saturdays, that we don't use here in New Jersey and pretty much the good majority of the country. Um, Mike, being the elder statesman and being around, Jenifer's only been in it for 6 years. Has Texas always been using the NCAA rules? Is that something that's kind of new, or has it always been that way?
Yeah, as far as I know, it's been that way. And I brought this book with me today. It's called Anatomy of a Game. This book
Okay.
was written by David Nelson. David was a long time rules editor for the NCAA. And so what he did is he kept all of his notes. And before he passed, he went through and basically wrote a history of the NCAA rules year by year. It's a great book, but in the book, he talks about the things that Texas high schools have contributed to the rules because there has been this close partnership over the years between Texas high school football and the NCAA. So we've pretty much been symbiotic the whole way along. We've had exceptions, as far as I know, all the way along, but we still we use them as our base.
Okay. And now I know here in New Jersey and again across the country, there are always going to be your state associations that are going to have little modifications to what the federation is. One of the examples I could say that I know right off the top of my head is the overtime rule. One state will start, and here in New Jersey, we actually do follow the collegiate overtime rule, where in other states, the ball is being placed at the 10-yard line. Other states, I know of, the ball is being placed at the 3-yard line, and they're getting one play to try to get it in. So I know that's just one thing where you do see variations from state to state, although it still is falling under the NFHS umbrella. Um,
Mike, can
Jenifer,
I say one thing that we just skipped by? In addition to the UIL in Texas, who governs the public schools, we also have private schools in Texas, and there are a couple of different bodies. The primary one being TAPS, and they also have There are exceptions, but for the most part, they are the same as the UIL. Their one significant difference is they have a mercy rule in their game, and we still don't have a mercy rule in Texas 11-man football. And I don't know about NFHS if you have a mercy rule.
So our state of New Jersey, and I'm not. I'll ask you for your clarification. We have our mercy rules turns into a running clock with a 33-point lead. We're not ending the game, but a 33-point lead in the second half. So the first half is still played straight. Second half, if a team goes up by 33 points, we now have a running clock, and we stop the play at what we depends upon where you learned it. But I was taught spit, score, penalty, injury, or timeout would be the only 4 times that the clock would stop once it gets into a running clock. Now, when you're talking about a mercy rule, you're saying in the private schools they do have a mercy rule and the public schools do not?
Yeah, Jenifer, you probably worked that more. Is it 40 points?
It is 40 points. And then we also have something, since you're talking about the mercy rule, is we also have something a little bit more unique, 6-man football. And for that, it's 45 points and we go to the half. And then after that, they have to at least go to the half. And then after that, it's just based upon that 45-point differential versus some NFHS I know has 8-man.
Yes. So now when you're talking the mercy rule, though, my son's a baseball player, so I know we have mercy rule, and if you're losing by 10 runs after 5 innings, game's over. So if a team's up by 40, is that the end of the game, or is it change just the dynamic of how the game's played, or like the running clock type scenario that we're doing?
Yeah, it's just that's when the running clock kicks in.
Yes.
Okay.
40 points in after halftime.
And then in 6-man, the game actually stops at that 45-point differential.
Okay, so it does stop at the 6-man level.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, here in New Jersey, we don't have any 8-man game. It's all 11v11 here in New Jersey, but I know across the country there are definitely 6 and 8-man games, all different places. But yeah, here in New Jersey, that's not something that I'm too familiar with.
That's 6-player football is a wild game, and Jenifer could spend a day talking about 6-player football. I know.
The other night, I did 11,754 steps. So if that tells you how wild it can get.
Did you make it through the whole game, or did you have to stop at halftime?
No, we actually made it through the whole thing, and thank goodness for pre-workout.
What was the score?
It was 82 to 65.
There you go.
See, I
Love that game.
It was great, and several points through it, we were actually within 3. So they would get about 10 and then bring it down to 3-ish points, and then back up. So it was this constant back and forth, and actually it was probably one of my best games of the season and one of the most fun, just because both teams were really in it, really competitive, and even when they got down to that 10 or 15 points, they did not give up. So good on them. I get it. One team has to lose, but in that case, the fans didn't have to lose because they got a darn good game out of it.
Okay, now I've watched arena football and I've seen the small sided teams and different things like that. Are you playing on a full field when it's 6v6?
It's 80.
Okay,
80 yards.
That's still a lot of running. So I could definitely see where you get those 11,000 steps in.
Yes, and we also had typically they assign us 4-person mechanics versus that 5 or 7 people on the field. So in my case, being on the line, when we would go for that try or the extra point, I'm actually having to run under the upright. So I get a few extra steps. You get the touchdown, and then if they're kicking, you're running a little bit more.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of fun to play, but whew, I give you a lot of credit for working those games.
We don't get to sit on the bench, unfortunately, between plays and swap out.
Yeah, that's actually one thing that a lot of people don't understand is we don't get to make in-game adjustments and going over to a dry erase board and talking over a play with the coach, like some of the teams get to do. So I'm not gonna lie. My first introduction to Texas football was Friday Night Lights, which I'm sure you're both familiar with. I read the book when it first came out, and then saw the movie, which didn't really do the book justice. I got to say, I wasn't a big fan of the movie. I loved the book better. Um, but the atmosphere that you all have down at Texas, I haven't been able to personally experience that. What's it like with those big games? I just saw DeSoto versus Duncanville was this past weekend. How
Mhm.
many fans are you guys getting at a game like that?
Mike, that's all on you. You're the big wig here.
I don't, that's a great question, Mike. And I don't know how many they had there. My guess is as many as the stadium would hold, which it may be 20,000. I don't know. That's just a guess. I have no idea. But it's like we play our state championship games for the past several years at Jerry World at the Cowboy Stadium in Arlington.
Yep.
And when you start on Wednesday with the 6-player games, and you work your way through the two divisions in each classification all the way up to Saturday, and by Saturday, and even sometimes on Friday, you're going to have 45 to 50,000 people in there watching some of those games if they're particularly competitive.
That's an amazing atmosphere. I would love to be able to witness that myself. So it's on my bucket list. I've got a whole bucket list of when I retire. I got 5 more years of teaching to go before I'm able to retire. Making a trip down south for Big 12 SEC football and some Texas high school football is on my list of things that I definitely want to experience.
It's
We had
crazy. It's crazy talking to my friends when they move down here and they've worked other states in football, because we'll have, say, a 3A, 4A game, right? Not really huge, but for them, they said that's bigger than some of their college games. So it's cool kind of getting to experience that intensity. I've had stadiums, 6-man or even 2A games where it was so packed that they had pickup trucks lining the end zones because they didn't have enough seats in the stands. And it's when it's that tight, it may be a small stadium, but you can just feel the energy. And if that doesn't pump you up and make you run a little bit harder when you're completely gassed, I don't know what does.
when I first started, I was working out of in West Texas in that area, and there was a town that I used to love to go to because I think the population of the town was like 400, and there would never be less than 1,500 or 2,000 people in the stands. I don't know where they came from because the town population was only 400, but they came from I don't know where. It was great.
That's great stuff. That really is.
It really
All
becomes
right,
a
so
community building thing.
So I'm acquiescing about my retirement time here, which I still got many moons to go. So let's get back to talking some rules here.
Yes.
So Jenifer, earlier I had mentioned, and before we started, one of the biggest things that a lot of people ask me about and they always say, I'm sitting there and I'm watching clips on YouTube or whatever social media, and I'm seeing this game go on, and I'm like, oh my God, they can't do that. That's illegal. Oh, that must be from Texas. And the big one tends to be the cut blocks. And because of the NCAA, and I mentioned before, I was a former offensive lineman. We used to be able to cut anywhere on the field.
Mhm.
Jenifer, I'll ask you this one first. What's the rules now for cut blocking under the Texas rules now and the
I was
NCAA rules?
I was actually going to hand that one over to Mike just because he knows the history behind it a little bit more. But every year it just seems like they keep getting tighter and tighter and tighter on it, because safety just becomes a bigger and bigger concern on it.
Okay. And a bit, Mike, I'm not meaning to interrupt you. And to clarify, under NFHS rules, we are still allowed to cut, or not we, but the players are still allowed to cut block, but the cut block must happen immediately at the snap and at the line of scrimmage. It has to be within the tackle box, which is always a gray area because some teams with exceptionally wide splits, are they considered the tackles? Are the tight ends considered in the box? So we do have some gray area, but the one thing that we now have set in stone is it has to be immediate and it has to be at the line of scrimmage. And it can
Mhm.
now be from a 2-point stance, which was also something um, that they put in more recent, because it used to be you had to be down in the 3-point stance in order to cut. But as long as that player is in a 2-point stance and they're going straight down, that is still a legal block. Unless it's a chop block, unless we got a high-low type of scenario going, but a straight cut block is still legal in those scenarios. So, Mike, you'd be able to give us a little history on the cut blocking scenario?
Well, again, we follow the NCAA rule, and to my recollection, well, at least for the past 30 plus years, when they make a change, we take the change. We haven't accepted out of it, and we've never had an exception that was more restrictive or less restrictive than the NCAA rule. And so that's the way it is today. So the rules that you see on Saturday in those games, that's the same rules that we follow in Texas high school football. So the linemen that are in the tackle box at the snap and stationary, and when we talk about blocking below the waist, there's really two kinds of blocking below the waist. There's from the front and there's from the side. From the side is very restricted, and basically, like you said, the initial line charge, that's when those linemen that are in the box can block from the side below the waist. After their initial line charge, they can still block below the waist, but it has to be from the front, and it has to be in the tackle box. And of course, the ball still has to be in a tackle box, because once it leaves the tackle box, there isn't a tackle box. It evaporates.
Yes.
So you can't do it anymore. And that no downfield blocking below the waist.
No.
And I just want to clarify with that too, what you were saying, Mike, because when I was coaching my days, we used to run the flexbone offense. So we used to go down to Navy and clinic with the Navy coaches, and that sideways cut block that you were referring to with the lineman, it was still at the line of scrimmage, but it was sideways. It was a backside tackle trying to cut a 3-tech or maybe even a 2-tech coming all the way across at the line of scrimmage to allow that cutback. And I know when the NCAA changed that rule and made it more restrictive, that kind of took a little bit away from Navy with being able to run their option game as well as they used to back in the day. So that's a great point with how they do it. Jenifer, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're okay. It's just when you start talking cut blocking, you are going into that blocking below the waist or even chop blocking, and going, which area are we focusing on? Because if I look up cut blocking, obviously, that's not something that's just going to be straight in my rule book. So it's going.
Yeah, it's a language thing that we're pretty obsessive about in Texas. We try to use the language. We use our language. We don't want to use coaching language, and cut blocking is what we hear coaches use, and we try to stick with block below the waist.
And that's why I kind of deferred it over to Mike, because then we start getting into the differential. And for me, obviously being a newer student of the game, I try to be as precise as I can. With what I use, and that way, whenever since as a line judge, whenever I'm communicating with coaches, I'm using textbook language so they know that I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that was my old coaching habits coming out of me with that one. So I do apologize.
Oh no, you're good.
So I know it used to be a block below the waist from, say, a running back on a blitzing linebacker. That used to be a legal play in the NCAA. They've now taken that out, if I remember correctly. Is that true?
No, he can still block below the waist from the front, as long as the ball's still in the box. So yeah, he can do that, but it has to be from the front. It can't be. And for us, we base front as the direction that the player is looking, and we put the hands of a clock at 10 and at 2. And so even though the front of my body, for example, might be this 10 to 2, if I'm looking over here, then my 10 to 2 shifts. And we're the intent is for the kid getting blocked to have a chance to see the block coming, and that's why they base front on where he's looking, based on in and not on the way his the torso's looking. It's on where his head's looking.
Okay. So that definitely leaves judgment there with the officials. I'm making that call too still. So that's got to be a tough one.
And that's where a lot of the grayscale comes into the rules. It's not just NFHS versus NCAA. It goes into philosophy and how those rules are judged.
Gotcha. Yep, and that's always going to be a philosophical and judgmental type of play. Um, so I'm looking through my notes and stuff like this. Jenifer, you going back to your earlier comment, can you explain to the NFHS people about the 10-second runoff that you were referring to?
Yes, I actually pulled it up, and I always reference it before my games, just because it seems like every time I have it, it does come up. For it, the 10-second runoff, it's part of the penalty option for fouls that stop the clock with less than 2 minutes in either half. The runoff does not apply, and I always try to keep my hands up for it. Any foul that prevents the snap, so in some cases, a false start, encroachment, offsides, contact in the neutral zone, things like that.
Okay.
Intentional grounding, and then let's see, any foul committed with the intent of stopping the clock, and obviously that's referee's discretion, and also an injury.
Okay. So now you mentioned contact in the neutral zone. In Texas, is a defensive player allowed to cross into the neutral zone and then reset without it being offsides?
Yes. And then if they make contact, we're going to go ahead and kill that play.
Okay. Because NFHS, as soon as they break that neutral zone, we're killing the play right then and there, and it's a 5-yard offsides penalty right there.
And I'm looking for did it cause the offense to move?
Yep. So now, and that's actually something I know that Steve Matarante talked about with those. I don't want to think of the exact language, but the discernible acts, I think, is how he referred to it, with the defense either shifting side to side, making it to try to draw the offense off sides. Are you guys following that rule too of calling a delay game on the defense if they do a
Yes.
hard shift to? Okay. So now
And
that is something. Go ahead.
what I'm looking for on the line also is, what is the intent? Are they making a football move to shift to react to the offense? Or
Yep.
are they doing this to draw them and try to force the penalty?
Because this actually just got brought up at my local chapter meeting about 2 weeks ago. We have a local team that on field goals are hard shifting out wide with 3 or 4 of their players, both that, say, lined up in A gap as an example. The whole team on a cadence by, I guess, a linebacker, they're all hard shifting wide to try to get the field goal team or going for the point after to try to jump off sides. And we had a long discussion with it. And according to NFHS rules right now, if there's no echoing of a simulated snap, that is a legal play. Where I know NCAA rules, that is now an illegal play. And it was actually something that we debated, and our interpreter went to all the interpreters in the state, and they had a conversation about it to find out how we were going to rule on it, so that across the board we were all on the same playing field. But they did agree it is different than what we're seeing in the NCAA right now. So, and that could be something that's going to change state to state too with the NFHS. So I just relaying it across from New Jersey.
It was a point of emphasis this year in the NCAA to try to tighten up the actions that the defenses have been taking, because it was believed that they were doing it with the intention of creating false starts. And honestly, we're getting almost to the point where the defense might be held to the same restrictions as the offense when it comes to pre-snap movement. We're not there yet. They can still move, but it just has to be done in a way that we don't believe that they're trying to create a false start.
That was actually one of the complaints that I had from a coach. I had a student who was stomping. It was very obvious he was trying to pull him off sides, probably, I think, week 2, maybe week 3. And obviously, I called him on it. And the coach was like, but he's defense. He can do whatever he wants. No, coach. And I was obviously just like in this conversation, able to clarify that, let him know that he is able to move in response to the offense on what they're doing, but he can't sit there and, in this case, stomp. It was very big, and try to create a false start.
And
Yeah.
that is something that we also will call, and that's where my gray area comes into play, because I kind of agree with what you're doing. Here in New Jersey, we are going to call that on the defense, and it's going to be a 5-yard penalty, where years past it would be a 15-yard penalty. They actually just changed it to a 5-yard penalty. At first, they were calling it an unsportsmanlike type of play, so they were hitting them for 15. Now they're calling it a discernible act, where trying to simulate the snap of the ball and to get the offense to flinch with that hard stomp, or with a linebacker making a clap. That's something that they don't normally do. And if the offensive team, if that's their cadence, a clap, now you're trying to draw the team offside. So we will call that on the defense, and we'll hit them basically with a delay game penalty.
And before this year, they still couldn't do the clap. They couldn't
Yep.
essentially emulate the snap cadence. And that was even before this year. And I think last year, it was actually the last 2 years, it was a point of emphasis. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Mike. But they
You're right.
couldn't do that then. But I have noticed, you had mentioned the unsportsmanlike versus the 15 versus the 5. I have noticed that, honestly, the 5 does enough to kind of get the game back centered and to prevent the further action. So I feel like
Yeah.
the 15's a bit of overkill almost.
Well, it's like with the when we had the difference 5 and 15-yard face mask fouls. If you have the option to make something a 5-yard penalty, you're more likely to get it called than if the official knows it's going to be a 15-yard penalty. He might not be as likely to put the flag down.
True.
So now, do you have a 5-yard face mask penalty?
Oh, goodness.
Nah, this is old
No,
school.
definitely not.
That's old school.
Face mask
We
is
do.
a 15 all
We
day.
still got the 5-yarder. Yep.
Yeah.
We still got the 5-yarder. So that actually now leads me to another question. Automatic first downs.
Okay.
What penalties do you have that are automatic first downs? Penalty by the defense.
Any personal foul,
Yes.
Okay.
any unsportsmanlike conduct, any holding. I think that's it for the automatic first downs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
At least off the top of my head.
NFHS rules is the 3 roughings: roughing the kicker, roughing the quarterback, roughing the snapper. Other than that, it's a 15-yard penalty, and if the 15-yard gains you the first down, then you get a first down. But those 3 penalties are the only penalties that we have in the NFHS that it's an automatic first down. So defensive holding is a 10-yard penalty. If it happened to be 3rd and 12, it's now going to be 3rd and 2. Pass interference, same thing. DPI and your personal fouls are all going to fall into the same category, unless it's the roughing. And we always say roughing. Those are the only automatic first down penalties that we have in the NFHS.
Okay.
Yep. That's definitely a big difference.
Yes. Also, I did want to ask, because I didn't see it in here, how do you handle forward progress? I know with us, obviously, if the player gets hit, knocked back, I thought someone had mentioned in NFHS, it's kind of like the NFL, where it's where they go down, or do they actually get the forward progress?
No, we give forward progress.
Okay.
Yeah, forward progress is definitely in play, and that's definitely something that mechanic wise, I know we're always looking to improve upon, because we do communicate and do a lot of cross field mechanics and stuff like that with helping each other out for that forward progress placement. So we always want to try to mirror it, but yeah, we still definitely have forward progress. So if they get driven back, and that actually goes also to then if the player goes out of bounds, if they went out of bounds, but their forward progress was stopped in play, and then they get driven out of bounds, we're still winding the clock at that point in time. We're not killing it for them going out of bounds. So I don't know how is that for you guys?
Out of bounds is with, did they go with themselves or were they knocked out, essentially? Is
Their
how I
forward
look at
progress.
it.
Yeah, that's kind of the same philosophy that we have.
Yes.
Let me go back for a second. I just dawned on me when we're talking about the automatic first downs. Pass interference too. It's not a personal foul, but it is an automatic first down.
Yes.
Yep.
And
Yeah, I know that.
and some
Go
of that
ahead.
is almost muscle memory now. It's just when it does happen, like a pass interference, I'm just automatic first down. I know. Here's where we're going.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite fun that we have with our high school coaches who watch a lot of games on Saturday and Sunday. Pass interference in the end zone, they're looking for the ball on the 1 yard line, and in our rules, if it's 3rd and 11 from the 12 yard line, you're now going to get 3rd and 6, or third, yeah, third
So
and five and a half from the six
half the
yard line.
distance.
We're going half the distance, and it's not an automatic first down. So they're like, "Why isn't that a first down? Why isn't it on the 1?" And I'm like, "Coach, that's not our rules. It's a half the distance penalty from where it was, and it's replay of the down if it doesn't get the line to gain." So that's always one that a lot of coaches are kind of befuddled the first time that they see that.
I can see why.
Yep. So now, pre-recording, we talked about, and Jenifer, you said you got to throw your first flag with the targeting type of penalty, and Mike, you had asked the question of it being reviewable. Do you use a replay system in Texas for fouls like that?
Well, in the state championship game, there's in-game reviews that go on, but outside of that, obviously we don't do it in the games because we don't have the equipment set up there. But what can happen is, for the private schools anyway, they can send the video in, and we have a group of us that will look at it. And if we believe that it was not targeting, then we can take that off. But that's because they have a follow-on suspension in their game that we don't have in the public schools. So we won't do that for the public schools, other than as a courtesy, we might look at it, but nothing's going to change.
Okay, so if a public school player gets disqualified from a game because of targeting, they're just out for the remainder of that game. There is no follow through for the following game.
For that particular foul, right. Now, if he were to be disqualified for, let's say, a flagrant personal foul, or for the flagrant targeting, or for having two unsportsmanlike, I'm sorry, not the flagrant targeting, for flagrant personal foul, having two unsportsmanlike conducts, then he does have a half game suspension the next week.
Okay, and that's
Yep.
something that can't be overturned.
Only if we make either a rule misapplication or we make a numbering mistake. And it happens where a kid will be identified as having committed a foul, and they say they put it on number 8, and so they kick him out of the game. Well, when we look at the video, it was actually number 3 that should have been ejected. Then we can take the disqualification off of number 8. We don't put it on number 3, but we recommend to the UIL that they take it off of number 8.
Okay, that's definitely a good system.
And in my case, my documentation whenever I'm on field is a little bit more intense. Instead of just writing down the foul that it was on, or that who committed the foul, I tend to write down who it was on, as well as time, pretty much anything that I can get within those few seconds before the next snap. So that way I have as much information as possible to assist my white hat in that report.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Jenifer,
Mike,
are you the
an incident report has to be done after the game?
Yep.
When there's a disqualification, and that's really what we use to start the review.
Now, Jennifer, are you the designee for your crew that you're the one doing that documentation, or is everybody on the crew doing that same documentation?
Everyone documents their own. Different crews do it different ways. Some people actually record theirs. They tend to have a back judge who records theirs. We tend to document our own fouls, so that way in these circumstances you can communicate exactly what happened, because
Okay.
sometimes the coaches do have questions about your foul, so it makes you take ownership for it.
Absolutely. No, that's I like that you're at least taking ownership on yourself. You threw that flag. You can explain it the best way than anybody else can, instead of having, like you said, the back judge. Now we try to do it that we're all documenting it, but if it's something like that with the report that has to be submitted, then the white hat and that official that threw the flag are going to sit down and make sure that they've got the verbiage correct in that write up, and everything is crossed T's and dotted I's and everything like that.
Exactly.
So,
Yes, and
and
that's exactly
to
what
try to,
we want to do. And even if it wasn't something that we would need to submit for review, I personally, if it's something big like that, I want to review the film. I want to look at it. I want to make sure that what I'm seeing corresponds, because I do take ejections or large personal fouls like that extremely serious, because that can have real world impact on the
absolutely,
game.
yes.
Mike, you
And
mentioned that in the NFHS you have a, I don't know, for lack of another term, a targeting one and a targeting two, and we have something similar. How does it work in the NFHS?
so basically, if we feel that it was with intent, it can be an ejectable offense. There are some times where players go helmet to helmet, where it was one player kind of ducking of a tackler that was going lower, and the ball carrier kind of leaned down into it, and they went helmet to helmet. We could still call the helmet to helmet penalty in that one, but that's more of an incidental one, which we're still trying to get out of the game because it still does lead to the concussions. But that one didn't have true intent to injure. So we're not going to disqualify in that scenario. But if it's a true targeting where that person came in, we use Scud missile. We talk about in our crew that kid came in like a Scud missile, looking to take out that player with just bad intentions. Then that's something that we will disqualify the player for in that scenario. And again, that is something that I couldn't honestly tell you if that's across the board with NFHS, but I know that that's our philosophy and our chapter in New Jersey, and pretty much throughout the state of New Jersey, because we do talk about philosophy, and you had mentioned it before about the philosophy behind it, where we're looking. We understand we're dealing with kids, so we do want to make sure that the game is as safe as possible for those kids, but they're also kids, and we understand that some of them do make mistakes. It happens, and a lot of time it's not with malintent. As a lot of times it was just a bad play, and they're going to get penalized for it. But is it something that needed to be ejectable? That's where it's going to fall under the discretion, and typically that's going to be, again, like you were mentioning, Jennifer, it's going to be the throwing official in consultation with the white hat if we are going to disqualify that player or not. Sometimes it's like you said earlier. Sometimes you see it, you know it. Like there was ill will in that play from Jump Street. You knew it, right? It hit your bones. You knew it, and that's the ones you got to throw, and those are the ones you got to get.
Yes, and I know personally in 6 years, I I I just don't. I may have thrown a non-flagrant, but an actual flagrant or something massive, one time. Just
Yep.
because when you, like you said, when you see it, you know it. It's massive, and when that moment happens, and that's why, like I said, I like to go back, see that film, and make sure that my instincts are properly aligned with what I'm seeing.
Now, what film do you standardly use in Texas? What program is most of the state falling under one program?
Most of my stuff is through Huddle, and then
Okay.
for collegiate, it's through. I'm not in collegiate, but I've done a little bit of replay camps, and we use DV Sport.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, we're predominantly huddle here for the high school level, and I know collegiately some of them are still using huddle, some of them are transitioning for our smaller colleges around here. We have a lot of Division III colleges in our area. So I know a lot of the D3 schools are still using huddle. Um, Mike, anything you wanted to add to that?
About the film?
Yeah, and just about the targeting, as we were talking about the flagrants.
Yeah, well, I mean, in Texas, what we ask the officials to do is you look at the play, and if the play violates the rule, the NCAA football rule for targeting, then put your flag down, and then the crew comes together, and all the ones who should have had eyes looking in that area discuss what they saw, and if there's no disagreement, nobody says, well, no, I saw something different, then you go ahead and it's considered a flagrant targeting. I mean, it doesn't have to be like it's a vicious hit, even though
Okay.
we use the word flagrant. It's a flagrant targeting, and he's disqualified. Now, if during that discussion one or more of them start to disagree, and they say, well, I really don't think he lowered his head, or I don't think the contact was to the head or neck area, and the one who threw the flag doesn't come off of the flag, he still thinks it's there, we have a disagreement, then we go with a non-flagrant, and it's a 15-yard penalty, automatic first down, and it's a mark. So that player's now got one mark. If he
Okay.
gets a second non-flagrant, he's disqualified, but
And
he's not disqualified initially.
And to add
Okay.
on to that, whenever I'm coming into my white hat with that, I'm prepared with what kind of targeting. We do have 913, which is the forcible contact with the crown of the helmet, or 914. So I know, like the back of my hand, 913 or 914. 914 is going to be that forcible contact to the head or neck area of a defenseless player. So I'm prepared when I come to my white hat, going, here's exactly what I saw, and here is the rule application.
Jenifer, I love it. You're quoting book. I love it. You got that rule down. That's fantastic stuff.
Once again, it's the seriousness of it. To me,
Yep.
we're going into the application of potentially throwing a player out, or where they're halfway to being out of the game, and as well as the safety. And to me, targeting is probably the top of seriousness. And if they, hopefully, they would get to college, but I feel like when you're talking about philosophy, they take it just as serious, and we have to at the high school level as well.
100% agree. So I've got two more questions for the both of you. One of them being rules application that I know NCAA has put in. And then the other one is kind of one that I get a lot of feedback online with people asking because of what they see in the NCAA. First one's a simple one. Do you have the 2-minute timeout at the end of the half and that the NCAA now has implemented?
No, we UIL accepted that out, so we do not have that 2-minute timeout.
Okay, because yeah, we do not have that in NFHS. The only time that we will have any type of end of the half warning is on our sub varsity levels where we're keeping the time on our wrist instead of on a scoreboard, and
Right.
we're giving a 4-minute warning at that point in time and going from there. So that was the easy one. Now for my harder one, the uniform police, the
Oh gosh.
NCAA. Oh, ladies and gentlemen who are just listening, you have to tune in at the 47-minute mark and see the reaction from both Jenifer and Mike and me just bringing that question up because it's the same reaction I get from every official seems to be across the country.
If you
How
would
is
like
Texas handling?
if you would like to start a war with officials in Texas, just search that in the Facebook group, and you'll have every answer you ever want, and it's completely different from everybody. But I promise you, it will be a division of officials.
Uh, so in the rule book, in the NCAA rule book, what is it stating about knee pads and bike shorts? In essence, that you're seeing the big boys in Alabama, and or I shouldn't call out a school, but you're seeing in the big five, the Power Five conferences with the shorts rolled all the way up, and you could see their knees and thighs.
The rule says that you have pants with the knee pad in the pants, and the pants cover the knee. That's what the rule says.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, that being said, last year, I think it was last year, the NCAA Football Rules Committee tried to remove that from the rule book. They knew it wasn't being enforced, and for whatever reason, they didn't think it should be in there, so they tried to take it out. Every rules proposal in the NCAA, regardless of the sport, gets a final approval by the Playing Rules Oversight Panel, the prop. And the prop refused to allow football to remove the rule. So it stayed in the rule book. So it's still in the rule book that you have to
Okay.
have pants and cover the knees. But you can see
So now,
what the conferences do. And officials at the collegiate level, and I know Jenifer can speak to this, they do what their supervisor tells them,
Yes.
not what
yep.
necessarily what the rule book says or anybody else. They do what their supervisor tells them to do.
Yes.
So
And
one of my previous guests, I apologize. One of my
No, you're
previous
good.
guests that I had on is an official in the SEC, and he told me a story because I asked him the question too. And pregame, he saw a young man who had a gorgeous tattoo on his thigh, work of art, tattoo, absolute piece of artwork on the thigh. The official was in awe of it. He said it was one of the nicest arts that he's seen, let alone it just being a tattoo. And player came back out now for the game, and the official's like, "Son, you gotta roll your pants down." And his response caught the official off guard. He's like, "Sir, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. My NIL deal is with a tattoo parlor. This is my NIL." And he was completely caught off guard, and he's like, and he went to his white hat, and his white hat says, "I guess we're going to let it go, but that's something that we're going to bring to our supervisor to talk about after the fact." But that's the state of the game that it is now at the collegiate level. And I know there is trickle down with the high school level with NILs and stuff like that. So you're seeing stuff like that, unfortunately.
So my question is, if that same player had come out with a set of wings and a billboard strapped to his back, would we still allow it because he's got an NIL deal? I personally, during my pregame, I do a walkthrough, and I've noticed a little humor goes a long way. I will joke with them because they like to wear the 80s crop tops and the short shorts. And I tell them, guys, I'm not wearing my crop top or my cute shorts. You can't either. And they tend to laugh it off. And guess what? They immediately start unrolling them. But I also do look at, I know some of these schools are really small. They get what uniform is issued. So I personally make sure that the knee is just pulled down because I do understand some of these 6-man schools, they probably have 6 uniforms. And that was the closest one that fit them.
Yeah, and that's something that me and the crew that I'm on, philosophically, we have the exact same mindset, because you have some players that are on a low income team that happen to be 6'7", and the largest pant that they have for them, the need, as long as they continue to try to tug them down and pull them down and they're doing the right thing, we're not going to penalize the kid. Where unfortunately we do have crews that, nope, that kid can't play the game, and never going to take the game away from the player. But now if that team comes rolling out with 120 on their team and they're all wearing brand new uniforms, well, then we got a little bit of a different story there. But knowing the demographics of where you're officiating and the players that you have definitely is something that has to be taken into account, because we don't want to take that experience away from a player because they're tall or because they weigh a little bit more than another player. And Jenifer, you actually stole one of my lines, because I'm a former offensive lineman, and I tell the players too, I'm like, "Oh, do I get to roll up and have my belly hanging out like you guys?" I'm like, "You wouldn't like the 50-year-old pale white belly that I got going on."
Well, I mean, I'm a middle-aged woman, and nobody wants to see that out there for me either. But also on Thursday nights, we wear probably the most unflattering, non-athletic shorts I have ever seen in my life. So, like I said, I feel like part of what we do as officials is the psychology of the game and how we communicate effectively. and you figure out what works and how can I be most effective in my preventative officiating. So in this case with knee pads, that 2-second dose of humor immediately gets a positive reaction out of a kid who may have ignored you. Maybe if you were almost too stern, do we need to be serious? Yes, but it's a knee pad. I'm
Yep.
going to be lighthearted about it and get the most effective response out of them.
And it's something that my head official brings up to our attention all the time, and he does make a valid point, but it's not in the rules. But has a knee pad today really saved an ACL injury?
But that's not the purpose for the knee
Yep.
pad.
Here it comes.
I know.
Here it comes.
If you go back to the book, it'll tell you.
I love it.
There were injuries and even deaths coming from bony knees that were being used in a pile against opponents. And so that's why the knee pad was even put into the rule book. That's the purpose for it.
And
now,
the other night, Mike, that saved me. I had a kid who was just like, but ma'am. And Mike and I have had this discussion before regarding the purpose of knee pads. And I told a couple of them, I was like, it's not to protect your knees. It's to protect your opponent for when that knee goes down. And I want both of you walking off my field, not rolling off. So I'm going to tell the other team the same thing. Guess what? They all immediately.
Yep. No, I agree. And like you, I try to make a little fun with them and have them and kill them with kindness. And honey goes a lot longer. And I say, oh, don't you want to be a knee model when you grow up? You're not going to be able to be a knee model. I'm like, I can't be a hand model anymore.
Well, and one of the things that was actually brought up, I think it was actually at our state meeting this year, was just how positive affirmation versus going out there and just being the stern ref. Hey, that was a good, clean tackle. That positive affirmation for the correct actions that they were doing goes a long way, because when you do have to throw the flag on the more serious things, now they realize you're not picking on me, ref. You care about me in the game and you care about the safety. And so that way their interaction isn't always negative and enforcer. It's a partner in the game.
Yeah, and I like to do a lot of verbal officiating. I'm an umpire, and here in New Jersey, we're still on the defensive side of the ball, and so I'm in the mix with the linemen every single play. And I spit my whistle out, and I'm using my voice more often than not. But yeah, I'll go, hey, great job, hey. I love that you helped him up. Great job. Let's go. Keep that up. Good sportsmanship. Different things like that. I always love giving that positive, that little tidbit.
Yes, or things like when they're in the coach's box, I tell them, hey guys, move back. The coaches need room to work. Because now, once again, I'm not doing it to be mean. I'm trying to help the coaches have space to work.
Yes. Definitely. I'm stealing that one when I'm working the sidelines again. Well, Jenifer, Mike, we're just about at the hour mark, and this kind of flew by. So yeah, thank you very much once again.
I've passed the quiz.
So ladies and gentlemen, again, Jenifer Calhoun, Mike Wise, I truly appreciate you both taking time out of your busy schedules. Jenifer mentioned before that she's waiting to go to rugby practice right now, so she took the time out from rugby.
Hey,
she's got to blow off some steam.
Refs need hobbies too.
Absolutely. I love it. But once again, thank you both for taking the time. Ladies and gentlemen that are out there listening, hit me up. Any questions, hit the like, hit the subscribe button, go to those YouTube pages. You'll be able to see Mike and Jenifer's reaction to the uniform question. Like I said, at that 47-minute mark, definitely want to take a look at that. But hit all those likes, those subscribes. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free, email me, MikeDThereferee@gmail.com. Again, we're all looking to try to grow this sport, continue the sport going in the positive direction, continue the kids to be healthy, coming on and off the field, to start the games and end the games. And it's a great way to stay involved in this sport that we love. If your schedule doesn't allow you to be a coach and you still want to be involved, get into officiating. It's a great way to still be. And like Mike was saying, 20,000 fans at a game, you're still involved in the game. We are the third team, and you will feel that energy the same way. Once again, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jenifer. Truly appreciate you both taking the time tonight.
Thank you for
Thanks,
having
Mike.
us.
Thank you.
All right, guys, and good night.
Good night.